with CJ, with CJ, with CJ. Coolin' with CJ, with CJ, with CJ. We coolin' with CJ, with CJ, with CJ.
Welcome back to another episode of Coolin' with CJ, and I have a special guest for me, former NBA player. He's a great advocate for drugs, substance abuse, and things of that nature. He's a public speaker now, motivational speaker. Just has turned his life around and is making people better through the process. So, with no further ado, welcome Mr. Chris Herren. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, brother. Thank you. Appreciate that introduction.
No problem. No problem. Chris, let's go back to Durfee High School. Obviously, you was the man back in high school. You averaged 26 points per game, which is pretty good. And then you have the school record with 2,073 points. So just take me back to high school, how it was playing 4 years at Durfee High School.
I mean, listen, there was an unbelievable tradition. I grew up with that tradition. It was within my family from, my brother, my father, my grandparents. There was an unbelievable legacy of people behind me that played before me. So, back then, Durfee basketball, to me, in my little world, that was the Boston Celtics. I tell people all the time in 1988, 1989, I paid more attention to Durfee basketball than I did to Larry Bird and Dennis Johnson. Because that's kind of all we knew. That was the bubble that we grew up in. So it was always a focus of mine, right? It was my energy was always going in that direction that, Durfee basketball is going to be the next step. And, for me, it's interesting, right? I never dreamt further than Durfee basketball. Some people would think that's kind of crazy being a McDonald's All-American and a college basketball player and then to get drafted. From in my early childhood, there was none of that. None of that was in my childhood. It was just let me get to Durfee basketball.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that is crazy because somebody as good as you will automatically think like, hey, they want to go college, eventually pro, but just to hear that, that wasn't your mindset. Durfee was just the end goal.
And I think it speaks volumes to almost, if you really want to unwind it in a sense, it speaks volumes to the level of pressure. That's as far as my head could go. That's as far as my dream would dream was to be at Durfee basketball. There was nothing behind it. There was nothing I ever looked behind that. So that was always such a huge, huge focus of my life, my childhood, my teen years. And then to finally get there and do, to accomplish what I was able to accomplish. The other thing too about it is I never took it that serious. I look back now on my high school basketball career. Gosh, I could have been so much better. I didn't take it that serious. When you're drinking every weekend, smoking every weekend, pills occasionally, hallucinogenics here and there. The focus wasn't my future in basketball. I mean, it was basically just partying with my friends. And, I look back on that time in my life with as much success I had. I look back at it with a lot of regret, a lot of things that I should have did differently back then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So despite that, being in Durfee, at that time your mindset was the end goal. You end up, being a figure in a book called Fall River Dream. So what was that like, being in high school? Somebody approaches you, like, "Hey, I want you to be in my book." And you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. It's a big deal, right? I mean, not too many kids who are 16 years old, have an opportunity to spend a year with an author. I look back on that book and I said some things in that book. I've never read the book. My relationship with Bill Reynolds was too special. He gave me an opportunity to read it before it was printed and edit and pull things out. I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted it to be his book. But when someone has a pen and paper every day for a year straight, you're going to say some things that you wish you could take back. And especially as a teenager, especially at 16 years old.
Yeah. So you're in high school, you're at Durfee, you're a senior, you're about to graduate, you got the 26 points per games, you're doing well, you got the book, you're in the book. Now it's time for college. So there are rumors that you turned down Kentucky and Duke, which are arguably not only the probably two of the best colleges in history for basketball, but two of the most legendary coaches as well. So what was the decision and plan for Boston College and passing up colleges like Duke and Kentucky?
Well, I think Kentucky, just for what I can remember, there was a hooper named Allen Edwards who played at Kentucky. And we were in the same class, and I got a phone call from Billy Donovan and Rick Pitino, and they said, listen, this kid is ready to commit. Are you willing to commit? And I just I didn't want to be rushed, right? So at the end of the day, the opportunity was there for a period of time, and then the opportunity was gone because they brought in the guys that were willing to commit to them. Listen, Boston College was just coming off of a Final Four. I mean, they were playing with Bobby Hurley and Howard Isley, and they were hooping. I mean, I think they beat North Carolina. They were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. My freshman class that signed with BC was ranked in the top 5, 6 recruiting classes in the country. So we were kind of bringing it. And at that time, Boston Amateur Basketball, BABC, we were national champions. I mean, we had played the whole circuit throughout all of the United States and won the national championship 3 years in a row. When you look at it, you got guys like Scooney Penn, Randall Jackson. There were guys set up to start coming that way that we could play. The other factor in that too is my mom and dad, they were getting divorced, right? So my world got kind of jolted a little bit. I got kind of set off its axis somewhat. And staying home was comfortable. Staying home was probably the easier, softer way. I look back on my life today and if I could do it over again, I would have went to prep school. I would have learned how to live by myself on a campus with supervision with adults. And I would have went through that process a year before jumping into going to college.
Yeah. Okay. So now you're going to BC, you got your college, you get there, you got a couple failed drug tests and then you break your wrist, as a freshman. So what's your mindset? You're a freshman. Not only do you have the failed drug test, but then it gets worse by you breaking your wrist. So you actually can't play at all. So what's the mindset of an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old at that time as a freshman? Just like, I'm here and now, just like that, I got to sit on the bench and just watch.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I wasn't ready for the moment.
Okay.
I just wasn't ready for it, right? I think there's a lot of kids who get injured and go about it accordingly and appropriately. For me, it was an opportunity to stay out all night. It was an opportunity for me to act like I was a senior on that campus. I wasn't ready for that campus. I wasn't ready for that life. I didn't have the skill set. I didn't have, the responsibility. And to be quite honest with you, like going back to what we talked about earlier, it didn't matter that much to me. I wasn't like, oh, I got to do this. I got to hoop at BC to go to the pros. I didn't look at that like that. I just looked at it as, the next competition. So when I got pulled out of that, it was difficult. And to be honest with you, even if I didn't break my wrist, I probably wouldn't have made it the year. I probably wouldn't have made it the year by my lifestyle.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. So what was the decision? So you break your wrist, the drug test, you eventually, get expelled from BC, then you transfer to Fresno State. What was the decision in Fresno State? And also, why keep going? What kept motivating you to keep going? Because at that point, you're doing drugs, you're partying, you broke your wrist. You're like, why am I doing this? I should just stop playing basketball. What motivated you to keep going? And then why Fresno State?
I think pride and ego is what kept me going. My whole life they told me I wasn't going to be good. I wasn't going to be good enough at this level. I wasn't going to be good enough at the next level. So a lot of it was that kind of internal desire to prove people wrong. And again, it was never about me. It was about proving people wrong. And that's not a healthy way to go about this process, right? Like the focus has to be you. But you know, in 1995, right, cocaine wasn't a big thing. Like, if you look back, when I got in trouble with cocaine in 1995, there weren't many college athletes being talked about doing cocaine, right? If you rewind the tape a little bit, the only cocaine you hear about is Len Bias. That was 1984. So there was a decade of it was quiet, right? So now all of a sudden you got this McDonald's All-American who's at BC, who's partying, who's doing cocaine. Nobody wanted to touch that, right? Except Coach Tarkanian. Coach Tarkanian was like, listen, you're not the first one that I've had experience with that had these hardships. And it doesn't have to end there, right? And he challenged me, like, let's you've worked too hard to walk away at this moment. So his experience, whether it was with UNLV, Long Beach State, and the players that he's coached and mentored and kind of carried through his career with, it just made sense for me to go that route.
Yeah, definitely. So, in 1997, you failed a drug test at Fresno, and then you went to a rehab center for about 21 days, and then you returned to the team. So during that time in the rehab, what is your mindset as a college player? Like, are you embarrassed? Do you feel like you let your team down? Do you feel like you let your family down? What's your mindset? Like, man, I'm doing it again. Like, I don't want to mess this opportunity up like I did at BC. What's your mindset when you was in that rehab for 21 days?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's. I think any 21-year-old kid who ends up in a drug rehab, it's hard to adjust to that, right? Like, listen, I'm sitting at my treatment center right now, and we got 21-year-olds come in here. It's not easy. It's not easy for a family to drop off a child. And the truth is, at 21 years old, I was still a child. But for me, and I've worked really hard over the years with this platform, that recovery is not punishment. Treatment centers aren't prison, right?
Right.
Like, they're opportunity. And for someone like me who was struggling, I looked at that opportunity in Salt Lake City, Utah, when they sent me away for 28 days, as they're just trying to get rid of me. That's all they want to do. They want to punish me. They want to get rid of me. They want to suspend me. I didn't look at it as, from the perspective as I should have, right? Like, I'm 21 years old, man. I'm going to get introduced to recovery. I got my whole career in front of me. I've struggled with substance use since I was 16 years old. Like, let's put this to bed and let's get after it. I didn't look at it like that. I looked at it as, I got to serve my time. I got to do my penance. Let me get this 28 days over with, and let me get back to hooping again.
Yeah, gotcha. So you get through all the, controversy, calm all the obstacles. And what was the decision to stay at Fresno State for 4 years? Because nowadays it's not common. Most people, they play 1 year, they're out. They go to the league. Look at Bronny James. He's like, he did 1 year. He's like, I'm out. I want to go to the league. So it's not really rare that you see people stay the whole 4 years. So why stay the 4 years before trying for
I
the
wasn't
NBA?
good enough.
Okay.
I wasn't good enough. I wasn't ready. I mean, back then people did stay, right? Very rarely did you see guys coming out. I mean, it happened, but on the college, on that level, I was playing against guys like Keon Clark and Tyrone Nesby and Andre Miller and Keith Van Horn and Michael Doliak and Anthony Carter, Michael Ruffin. Every night we had pros coming in, but they were men. They had been in college for 3-4 years. At that time in that generation of basketball, I was so far away from saying, like, let me go hoop in the NBA. So I had to do my time. And the reality is, in hindsight, looking at it, I wasn't ready then either. I mean, I got an opportunity, but, it takes a turn, especially back then, right? Basketball has become so specific and skill driven and private workouts and nutrition. Um, it wasn't like that back then, right? It was just like you just got to hoop, right? Like just go hoop, and there wasn't a lot invested into your own personal game. So I needed that time to get that experience to get ready to get into the NBA.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So 1999 is the NBA draft. What's your mindset going into that draft? Do you think, I have a chance of getting drafted? I don't have a chance. Maybe I'll be a walk on, after the draft is over, I could do some summer league action. So what was your mindset going into that draft?
I mean, you just got to get lucky, man. You just need one person to believe in you,
Yep.
and the reality is, like, I can be humble enough to say that if Dan Issel didn't believe in me and I didn't have a great workout with the Nuggets, I probably would have fallen all the way through. The
Yeah.
draft is tricky, man. Like, one pick can flip the whole draft upside down.
Yeah.
So, there were probably four teams that I thought I had a chance with.
Yeah.
Four teams that I thought for sure I could be a lock in the second round. And I just got fortunate enough to get Denver, who bought in and believed that at that number at 33.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. So you get drafted by the Nuggets, then you go on to play for your hometown team, the Boston Celtics. So
Mhm.
let's talk about what it was like, actually making that dream a reality. Like, hey, I'm in the NBA. When did it actually hit you? Like, hey, I'm in the NBA with all these stars and
Hmm.
around me.
It never hit me, man. I was living on Second Street in Fall River, Massachusetts, playing for the Boston Celtics. I promise you, you'll never find a Celtic live on Second Street in Fall River. You know what I mean? Like that just shows you how sad that part of my life was, man. Like the Boston Celtics it's not cute to me. You know what I mean? Like that's a very hard time of my life, man. I was, I was entrenched. I was drowning in opiate use. At that point, I was on the cusp of making a transition to heroin. Um, but having to play at a very high level with some very high level guys on a daily basis. And on top of that, managing, addiction, withdrawal, sickness,
Yeah.
um, and secrets, right? Like that was a very secretive time of my life. Everybody thought life was great, and if I look back at my career, the time that was supposed to be my greatest is probably my most difficult. That was probably my most difficult time in the NBA. If I see myself in a Denver Nuggets uniform, I'm like, okay, that's dope. If I see myself in a Celtics uniform, I'm like, yo, like I'm sick. It was a tough time in my life.
Yeah. It's just crazy how you never really know. I know it's kind of cliche what people are going through behind the
Mm,
scenes. People think in the NBA, oh, they're in the NBA, they got the life. They're in the
yeah.
league. A lot of people don't make, and then they're living a dream. But behind closed doors, it's like you know,
It's
it's
a
not what
grind
it seems.
too, right? Like when,
Right.
when you're sitting on the end of the bench, you don't know if you're going to play that night. You have no idea if you're going to get minutes. You don't know who's going to get in foul trouble. All of a sudden, you see people getting into foul trouble. So all of a sudden, your heart rate's going. Like I might get the work to come in, and you're playing from a deficit in a sense, right? Like that's hard. It's hard to walk off a bench. I don't care. I don't care if you're in middle school. Like it's hard
Yeah.
to come off a bench and put work in and be proud of it, right? It's not easy to just to join that level of competition and be right there where you want to be. Um, so you know, the reality is I was at the end of the bench. And some nights I got a look, and some nights I didn't. And the truth is, at that position, you're just coming in to give Nick Van Exel a breather. You're coming in so Nick can get a few minutes of rest, stay out of foul trouble, and just hold the team and let him come in and finish it off. So
Yeah.
um, there's not there's not a lot of glamour in being a backup, or a backup to a backup.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So You play a couple of seasons in the NBA, with the Celtics and the Nuggets, and then you decide to play overseas where you played in like, China, Germany, Iran, Turkey.
Yeah.
So what was the decision in going from the NBA to overseas? What was that decision like?
Yeah, man, I was struggling. So
Yeah.
so I can sit here and talk about all of those decisions. All of those decisions, the
Mm.
core of those decisions were based off of addiction, right? So going to Italy, it was a lot of money. It was more money than I was making in the NBA in cash.
Mm.
Um, but it was a chance for me to get away from people. Like people were starting to see what I was going through. So if I can isolate my family and go over to Italy and nobody can see me, the chances of them ever finding anything out about me, drop drastically. Unfortunately, you bring yourself to Italy with you, right? Like I put myself in some real tough situations all over the world with addiction. Um, but again, my basketball was not the focus, man. Never was. Addiction was the focus. If
Mm.
I look at my career, um, my addiction dictated, what was next, where I was going, what I was going to sign for, how much I was going to make. Um, and, that I was just holding on by a string by the time I got overseas.
Wow. Wow. Okay. All right, Chris, this is the part of the segment is called Fast Five. So if you ever seen Family Feud, at the end they kind of have the quick hit questions where they have to answer something quickly and be timed or in those regards. So these are going to be 5 quick questions. I say a question, you answer, we go to the next one. It's 5 questions. All right. Favorite sports movie? Hmm.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
I'll say we'll go sports. I'll say Rocky.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Favorite NBA arena you played in? So not watched, but you actually played in.
Hmm. I'd say Salt Lake City, Utah. The
Nice.
Jazz. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, who's the best defender in the NBA you ever played against? Somebody you had a tough time against.
Hmm. Stephon Marbury.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
All right, current favorite player to watch in the NBA right now.
Yeah, I don't watch much.
Yeah.
I'm not a big basketball guy. I'm more of like boxing and tennis and those type of sports. But
Okay, so
um,
let's switch it. Favorite boxer. Favorite boxer to watch.
favorite boxers probably Crawford. I
Oh,
like yeah, I like Terrence Crawford. Um,
nice.
but favorite player, I mean, I would probably say the kid from Minnesota.
Oh, Anthony Edwards.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
he's a
he's one of my
dog. I like
favorites.
I like his I like his attitude.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is a personal opinion. Who do you think is the greatest scorer, not player? Who do you think is the greatest scorer of all time?
Oh man, I would say I'll go with Jordan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no wrong
yeah,
with Jordan at
yeah.
all.
I mean,
No wrong.
but you're wearing him, right? Like, come on, man. He's 5'11".
100%.
Like he's
But
170 pounds, 5'11", and not many people can do what he did at that size, at that weight.
yeah,
Like I look at your T-shirt and the times I played against him. People would say like, how do you guard him? You don't. You guess him.
yep,
Like you just if you get lucky to guess, then you're okay. But you don't see him.
right,
And my one of my memories about the NBA, I was checking into the game playing the Sixers, and we're the same age, and we came out at the same time, and both went to the Big East. Both have had our problems, and
mm,
he just pulled me to the side as I checked in, and he said, "Listen, I'm going to give you like two minutes. I'm going
yep,
to give you 2 minutes to get your body flowing, to get warmed up, but then I'm coming."
yep.
And and even with those 2 minutes,
Yeah, still, yeah, a
he's
lot.
still coming. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, Chris. So in 2008 in Fall River, you're back home. You overdose on heroin. You crash into a utility pole. So according to paramedics, you were, not alive. deceased, dead for 30 seconds. Was that the breaking point for you to stop drugs and alcohol
No,
addiction?
no, that
Okay.
wasn't the breaking point, right? I mean, some people are fortunate enough that that overdose is the pivotal moment in their recovery. Unfortunately, that wasn't mine. Um, you know, I'm not a huge fan of words like rock bottom. I don't believe people have to go to the depths that I went to in order to change their life and get sober. Um, but there's always depth. There's always room to go down further. And overdosing, crashing my car, arrested, public humiliation. I would say that it was a culmination of multiple moments throughout my addiction that brought me to that day, that pivotal moment.
Yeah. Okay. So for all the viewers that don't know, so Chris has been sober, drug free for about 16 years now. So, congrats on that. That's a big accomplishment. I know family members, friends that currently going through an addiction. So I
Yeah.
know it's not easy. And people always think addiction comes to drugs and alcohol, but addiction can be sex, it can be money, it can be TV, it can be your phone. Addiction is a lot of aspects. It's not just
Mm.
drugs and alcohol. So to overcome an addiction is, a big thing. So I definitely applaud that. For you overcome that, that's a big thing. So tell me what you're doing now, Chris. So, life after, being recovered from addiction for 16
Mm.
years. So just let the people know kind of what you do. I know you have some facilities open. You go around the world and talk to high schools. I know you came to Massachusetts back home to talk to some people, talk to some high school kids. So just talk about what you're doing currently,
Yeah.
to encourage young people and adults as well.
Yeah, no, I do. Obviously, there's three kind of arms to my business. Is
Yeah.
the Foundation Herren Project, and there's Herren Talks, and there's Herren Wellness. And Herren Talks, I do about 250 talks a year. Um,
Nice.
at all levels, from corporations to colleges to teams, to NBA, to NFL, rookies, symposiums,
Mm.
to high schools and middle schools all over the country. So that part of my life is pretty much the bulk of what I do. And then I have, Heron Wellness, where I'm doing this podcast from. 7 years ago, my wife and I, we said we wanna have our own, and we want to run our own. We want to give people what wasn't given to me, in a sense, and not given to a lot of people, what they deserve. So this residential treatment center that's located in Seekonk is one of my great accomplishments. I get a chance as the person who owns this to witness miracles day in and day out, and be part of that process with people. Um, whether it's 16 years sober or 1 day sober, man, like, you know, not everybody struggles with it, but it's
Yeah.
hard being you 24/7, man.
Right.
You know?
Okay. Yep. And this is going to be my last question for you. So you did a ESPN documentary called Unguarded, which
Yeah.
was nominated for 2 Emmys: outstanding sports documentary and outstanding editing. So what was that like, having something about your life broadcast to the world? Like, were you skeptical at first because everybody's going to know about what you went through, or did you want that to motivate people? So what was that process like doing that?
I mean, to be honest with you, I was naive. I didn't know. I had no idea, the reach that a documentary like this would have. I figured I'd be on ESPN one night, and some people would see what I went through, and understand the story, and then we'd move on. The beauty of it is it's kind of become a staple movie in every center in America, right? So anyone who's struggling with any type of addiction, Unguarded seems to be on the list. It was scary, right? Like when you open your world up to everyone to see, the pain, the suffering, the embarrassment, the shame, the guilt. Um, it's not easy sharing that, and but it's put it this way, it's been 14 years since that documentary came out, and I would do it again. I would do it again. So that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. All right, Chris. So if you have any social media, you can shout it out so people can follow you, a website that they can
Yeah,
follow you.
man. I'm easy to find, right? I'm easy to find. Herren Wellness, Herren Project, Herren Talks. Um, I'm not hard to locate. So I appreciate you having me on, brother.
No problem, Chris, and I appreciate you for coming
Yeah,
on
no
and
doubt. Thank you so much.
endeavors and all your projects, and hope the best for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bringing the real. You know he's for real. My brother, he's cooking no chill. Views up, we talking about mills. Hold up content, captured like stills.
Heavyweight champ, and he is still
From PG County to Mass, swagger on blast. Head of the class, style and class. Interviews money like chasing the bag. The content provider, we run it like laps. Sports, music, the best that act. Entertainment from around the map. Do not be sleeping away from your nap. Bringing the best, ready to crash. Top tier records, we set 'em and smash. Delivered by Dan, we sprint and we dash.
Coolin' with CJ, with CJ, with CJ. Coolin' with CJ, with CJ, with CJ. Coolin' with CJ, with CJ, with CJ. We coolin' with CJ, with CJ, with CJ.
You just got moss. Coolin' with CJ. It's your boy Day Green.